Yesterday marked the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, the march for voting rights from Selma to Montgomery that ended in protesters being beaten and bloodied by police. One of those protesters who was injured that day, Congressman John Lewis, made the march again yesterday, along with President Obama, former President George W. Bush, and other leaders in the civil rights movement.
If someone had told me when we were crossing this bridge that one day I would be back here introducing the first African-American president, I would have said, you're crazy, you're out of your mind, you don't know what you're talking about. President Barack Obama.
With effort, we can protect the foundation stone of our democracy for which so many marched across this bridge, and that is the right to vote. The Voting Rights Act, the culmination of so much blood, so much sweat and tears, the product of so much sacrifice in the face of wanton violence, the Voting Rights Act stands weakened. Its future subject to political rancor. How can that be? The Voting Rights Act was one of the crowning achievements of our democracy, the result of Republican and Democratic efforts. President Reagan signed its renewal when he was in office. President George W. Bush signed its renewal when he was in office. 100 members of Congress have come here today to honor people who are willing to die for the right to protect it. If we want to honor this day, let that 100 go back to Washington and gather 400 more, and together pledge to make it their mission to restore that law this year.
We are joined now by Senator Tim Scott, the first black Republican elected from the South since Reconstruction. He is in Montgomery, Alabama. He was in Selma yesterday. Well, Senator, thank you so much for joining us. You heard the president yesterday make that pitch to Congress to restore the Voting Rights Act. Do you support that, and are you going to push your leadership to run this through the Senate?
I certainly, Bob, I will tell you that I think every single American should demand making sure that every other American has the right to vote. I think we're all on the same page on that. The question is, how do we get there? To specifically punish 6 southern states for atrocities that happened 40 or 50 years ago without updating that formula seems to be discriminatory in and of itself. So what I would support is to take a second view of the Voting Rights Act and look at seeing how we could apply it universally to all Americans, every place, and let's judge people and states based on their performance today and not 40 or 50 years ago.
Well, so in other words, you're not for restoring it as it was, but you want a new version of it.
Yeah, when you look at the triggers back in the 70s and the 60s, South Carolina no longer qualifies. Let's look at current history, the current state today. Nikki Haley is the governor of South Carolina. She is an Indian American. I was elected statewide to the United States Senate by the voters of South Carolina, and I was first elected to Congress at the start of the Civil War. So there's no doubt about the fact that there has been amazing progress throughout the South, and we should make sure that the formulas that are used do not punish the history of a state, but should represent the present state of affairs.
Senator, let me ask you candidly, how do you think the first black president in America has done in terms of improving race relations?
I would say that we've had probably a neutral position on progressing from a racial perspective in America over the last few years. We have not made as much progress as some would like to have seen. And if you look at specifically the challenges faced by black America, the last 6 years have been challenging. Unemployment rate is near 12% overall. The poverty rate is near 28%. I will tell you that the last 6 years have not been good for most folks, middle America and down. This has not been a good economy for those of us who live in middle class America and moving down. I will tell you that there is a lot of opportunity for progress, and John Lewis spoke about what that looks like going forward, and he specifically said, education is the key. Education is the key. He said it several times yesterday, and I wanted to say it twice because my opportunity agenda focuses on the foundation of the American dream, and it starts with education. You can have a fantastic life here in America, in the South, in the North, in the West, and the East, if you focus your attention on outcomes driven by education.
Let me ask you this, Congressman. Do you think the Justice Department ought to dismantle the police department in Ferguson, as some are suggesting?
You know, I looked at some of the information. I will tell you that the challenges faced by Ferguson Police Department goes very, very deep. So we have to pay close attention to what happens next. I'm not sure what's going to happen next. I don't think the Justice Department knows what's going to happen next, but the thorough investigation is important and necessary.
And let me just close, Senator, by saying I just called you Congressman. I apologize for that. You are the first black senator from the South, since Reconstruction. And it's been a pleasure to talk to you this morning. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for having me back on Face the Nation.